Hello everyone, this is Tyler here. It is November 10th and I want to discuss with you why I think Belarus is not going to adopt MGTOW anytime soon. Okay, so Belarus is a relatively medium-sized country in Central Europe. It's close to Poland and the Baltics, and also relatively close to places like Germany. So yeah, Belarus is a country very similar in certain respects to Russia. Belarus has had a very interesting history. If anyone knows about this country, it took one of the largest hits during World War II, and they actually lost a huge percentage of their population during this time through both guys that were fighting as soldiers during the war and also just people, villages, and towns that were completely wiped out by different armies. It was just terrible, honestly. And I think to this day, Belarus has felt the impact on their country. I think some of the economic problems that have persisted to this day are thanks to the Second World War, unfortunately. And this is a tool of war, though. I mean, this is why war is a tool of banksters. It's absolutely terrible what it does to countries. But Belarus has fortunately improved a bit over the past few decades, and I think it's actually going to become a more significant country in the future. The reason I think so is because it's actually became probably more sovereign compared to other European countries. While it has a more authoritarian system, their president Lukashenko is very strong-arm in how he runs the government, but it's not to the degree of a place like North Korea. The country as a whole is actually run fairly similar to a place like Russia, a little more authoritarian though. And this isn't bad though, and keep in mind here that many Belarusians do support him. There's of course many that don't, but Belarus is a country that has been able to improve in smaller villages and towns, still relatively behind, but in their bigger cities it has gotten better. With that being said though, it's still not anywhere near developed like places like Germany or Sweden. It definitely lags behind. But now I understand we as a whole, as MGTOW guys, of course don't believe in long-term relationships or marriages, but that isn't to say that Belarus has a very good dating climate. And anyone that maybe has seen the show Bald and Bankrupt knows this guy has done tours and has visited virtually every part of that country. He's been probably through every town and village in that country. That's at least over a population of 500 people, and people have gotten to see what the country is about on a very macro and micro level, and I think he's portrayed the country very well. Belarus, of course, has a society that doesn't depend heavily on their government for handouts and subsidies, similar to a country like Russia. Of course, their tax system, income tax system, and other forms of taxes is quite low for the majority of people, and this is, I think, very beneficial when it comes to the interaction of men and women, because people are able to have a more traditional understanding of the dichotomy between the couples. And also Belarus also has pretty good relations with most of its countries surrounding this place. It's not perfect, of course, but people can definitely leave. And of course, many Belarusians do choose to leave, but many stay in Belarus and others leave and then come back. And this is something very common now in many European countries. Many of the younger people, of course, may look for work. They may study elsewhere. In certain sectors that don't pay very well, there are definitely better paying jobs than countries like Poland or Germany, but many do choose to come back or do stay in Belarus no matter what. I tell this to people that just like in Russia, people don't necessarily just want to leave Belarus just because the job pays 3 or 4 times more. People understand this often comes at a cost. And the other thing is, as we've experienced during this COVID epidemic, is in post-COVID epidemic is the remote job popularity has increased a lot. People are doing jobs remotely more than ever before, and this is, of course, given access to countries like Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, the ability to acquire these jobs that at one point in time would have only been available for domestic populations in a country. And now these jobs are accessible for many more people. Belarusians, of course, will do these jobs for a lower pay, and they also do a very good, they also work very well in certain areas. If we look at software engineering and anything related to IT and IT services, exceptional job. And there's many well-trained Belarusians. They're very reliable in this sense. And these kind of jobs, of course, can be done very remotely. This is one reason why in certain sectors like the IT and software industry, this has really helped the Belarusian economy grow a lot in the past 5 years. And I think this will continue. I think what will happen is they will build upon this and also continue working a lot with artificial intelligence or machine learning. And if anyone knows anything about machine learning here, it plays a very integral role in many aspects of society. I think we're going to see the prevalence of machine learning everywhere, honestly, in 10 to 20 years. I know Sandman has had a few videos where he's discussed this, and it's going to replace a lot of jobs, honestly, but it's also going to introduce many jobs. The jobs that it introduces, I think countries like Belarus understand and realize this, and likewise, they will tailor their education sector to meet those demands. And that's one of the beneficial things in a country like Belarus, like Russia. They tailor their education system to be in accordance with the demands of the economy. They don't tailor their job sectors to meet political agendas, which is often the case in Western countries. And this is one of the very beneficial things about being in countries like Belarus. It's awesome. And this is one job sector that's really benefited the country. And I think this will bring a lot more wealth in the coming years. They're going to build upon the technology and machine learning and software. This country very likely could become a major player in 20 years within these sectors. Now, if we look at a lot of the other sectors in Belarus, it's not very well paid, even for Belarusian standards. And it's the same thing with public sector jobs. It's not very well paid. Now, if we look at many of the jobs that ladies tend to work in, they're mostly in these low-paying areas. And that's one of the beneficial things for couples there is that for most ladies to be in a comfortable situation in Belarus, they ultimately have to be with a guy who is doing fairly well. Now, of course, most guys in Belarus are not going to be in a superb economic situation, but even to be in a pretty good situation, it's manageable for a Belarusian woman to find this type of guy. Their expectations won't be to the sky like in Western countries. And they'll probably be a lot more respectful to these kind of guys because there's just not as many of them because of how the economy is there. And these women also realize that they're never going to be making a lot of money unless maybe they have their own business or something, which isn't so common. Maybe they do, but most women with small businesses don't make a lot of money, regardless of the country. But they understand that it's probably going to be in their best interest to have high respect for the guy. And this is one huge benefit of a country like Belarus. Now, if we also look at the education system, as I had mentioned before, education in Belarus focuses on teaching the skills necessary in accordance with their job market and what the job market requires. They don't focus a lot on pushing political agendas, a lot of these social sciences like we see in Western countries. And therefore, people are trained the way they should be properly. And they're not brainwashing a lot of these students from a young age, both boys and girls, with all these political ideals, which is also helps as the two genders get older, they're able to have good relationships and interact, and healthy relationships result. Other aspects of Belarus that create a better environment for couples is the fact there's not the same kind of public subsidies to go around. And this would be for young people to old people, from cradle to grave, whether it's kids pre-kindergarten or senior citizens that are over 65, 70 years old. And this is important to understand because this often also correlates a lot to how relationships are approached and the respect that the two people give to each other. And this is something that we see in countries like Russia, even in China, in countries where there's not a lot of finances dedicated to these systems, whether it's pre-kindergarten or it's senior citizens. Couples understand on a personal level they often have to be much more codependent. And this is very key here, because unlike in Western countries like US and Canada, where there's so many public systems funded by public subsidies, people don't have a lot of respect in regard for each other, families and couples. And this is one of the reasons divorces happen so quickly. They don't have all these things in Belarus. And of course, they don't have these monster pension systems or social security systems. So there's a lot more importance placed on these family structures.